Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I want to thank the gentlewoman from Ohio for offering the substitute amendment and for her continued commitment to this issue. I am concerned that this amendment goes far beyond the intent of the original legislation, which was simply to require that credit scores be provided to consumers on an annual basis for free. The Fair Credit Reporting Act already requires credit reporting agencies to provide consumers with an annual credit report for free. And this amendment would add another requirement mandating that credit reporting agencies provide a consumer, upon request or potentially automatically, with a copy of his or her credit score, educational credit score, an explanation of how that credit score is calculated, along with any previous credit score in the consumer's file. This would not only create a new duplicative requirement, but it would create a complex, potentially costly process in which furnishers will be required to provide any previous credit score contained in a consumer's file, but also mandates that those previous consumer credit scores are erased within a 2-year period. I appreciated the gentlewoman's comment about this data being the consumer's data, but I think that sentiment runs counter to the bill, which requires consumer credit scores to be erased within a 2-year period. This historical credit data is crucial to determining the creditworthiness of borrowers, and deleting it will ultimately restrict consumer lending. And so while the intent behind the bill is certainly well-intentioned, our concern is that it will actually lead to hurting the very people that it's designed to be protecting. This substitute amendment would also require private lenders to provide consumers who are applying for a loan a free copy of any consumer report or credit score used in the underwriting process. Today, many but not all consumers already have free access to their FICO credit scores. So again, I thank the gentlewoman for offering this amendment, but I urge a no vote. And again, what we don't want to do with well-intentioned pieces of legislation is end up unintentionally hurting the very people that the legislation is targeted to help. So with that, I urge a no vote, and I yield back. I thank the chairwoman. And again, I want to speak in favor of the amendment from the gentleman from Minnesota, because I think he makes some important points I'd like to underscore here. For anybody who's watching on television, we agree with the purpose of providing the consumer access, free access, to the data and the credit history that they have earned over their financial life story. We agree. And in fact, that's why we have an existing law that gives consumers access to a free copy of their credit score. That is in current law, as Mr. Emmer pointed out, and I think as I pointed out at the beginning of my comments, the Fair Credit Reporting Act already provides consumers with free credit reports, an annual free credit report. And so what we're dealing with here, number one, is a duplicative requirement that is not required. I think, as Mr. Emmer pointed out also, if there's a problem with that credit score, we all believe that a consumer should be able to correct that for the sake of their creditworthiness and their ability to access capital or access credit down the road. And that already exists. Those protections already exist in law. But here's, I think, the point that my friend, the gentleman from Missouri, was making, which is really, really important. And I think this is why we have problems with the gentlelady from Ohio's amendment in the nature of substitute. The bill on page 11, on line 6 of the gentlelady's bill, removes past credit scores, and this does impact lenders' ability to assess accurately the creditworthiness of borrowers. And I'm quoting from the gentlelady's bill. A past credit score maintained in a consumer's file shall be removed from the consumer's file after the end of the 2-year period described under subparagraph A. That is a problem, because what that means is that, as the gentleman from Missouri was pointing out, a consumer's positive credit history will not be taken into account for a period of time preceding the most recent 2 years. Shouldn't we want consumers with a positive credit history prior to those 2 years to get credit for that. I think when lenders don't have access to the fulsome amount of credit history, they will restrict lending. They will increase the cost of credit, even for people, and especially for people with positive credit history. So again, this is not about protecting 3 companies with a monopoly, as the gentlelady from Ohio was arguing. This is not about a CEO's salary. This is about protecting consumers. And I think the gentleman from Missouri's point, my colleague from Missouri's point about we are in the fintech era is a really, really astute observation, because the full record of someone's credit history is increasingly important in the fintech era, where, frankly, technology and innovation and free enterprise is giving people with a mixed credit history more access to capital. Why would we want to restrict the ability of innovative fintech companies from really digging in to someone's credit history and identifying positive periods of repayment history and not give those individuals credit for that? So these are legitimate concerns, and it's not about protecting some company with a monopoly. It's not about protecting the credit agencies. It's about protecting the consumers. And so, again, the amendment in the nature of a substitute is perhaps well-intentioned, but I think it unintentionally actually harms the very people that the bill is actually designed to help. So with that, I urge a yes vote on the amendment from the gentleman from Minnesota, and I would urge a no vote if that amendment is not taken up, and I yield back.